On the 30th of October 2011, Karen Swift, a 44-year-old mother of four from Dyersburg, Tennessee, was reported missing. She had last been seen the night before after returning from a Halloween event. Her car, a white 2004 Nissan Murano, was later found abandoned near her home. Inside the vehicle were her mobile phone and some personal belongings, but Karen herself was nowhere to be found. The sudden disappearance of Karen Swift prompted an immediate search by local authorities as friends and family grew increasingly concerned for her safety. Hi, sweet ones. My name is Grandma Kitty, and before we dive in, take a second to subscribe if cases like this intrigue you. It helps me keep these stories coming. And while you're at it, tell me where you're watching from. That's how we find our neighbors here in our little true crime corner. Dyersburg, the county seat of Dyer County in northwestern Tennessee, is a small city with a population of around 17,000 people. Nestled among rolling farmland and stretches of thick forest, it embodies the quiet, slow-paced life that's typical of rural America. Its historic downtown, with century-old buildings and a stately courthouse sitting right at its center, reflects a community with deep roots and a strong sense of local identity. Life here moves at a measured and relaxed pace where neighbors actually know one another by name, and local events often bring the entire town together. Dyersburg is not only small and quiet, but it's also really affordable to live in. Housing costs are super low, groceries and everyday expenses are modest, and most residents enjoy a cost of living well below the national average. Like, you can actually afford to live here. Yet, despite its calm atmosphere and economic simplicity, the town is definitely not immune to tragedy. As the disappearance of Karen Swift in 2011 painfully reminded its community, bad things can happen anywhere. On the evening of the 29th of October 2011, Karen Swift attended a Halloween party at the Dyersburg Country Club dressed as Catwoman. The costume was on point. She went without her husband, David, to whom she had been married for 22 years at that point. A few weeks earlier, Karen had filed for divorce from him. Their marriage was falling apart. Her eldest daughter, 9-year-old Ashley, was also going to a party at a friend's house that same night. David stayed at home with their youngest daughter, Keisha. The couple had 2 older sons, Preston David and Dustin Glenn, but they were already adults and no longer living at home with them. Friends who were at the party later recalled that Karen did not enjoy herself at all that night. She seemed off. Friends remembered that she felt completely out of place, even describing herself as a third wheel among all the couples there. She confided in one friend that she wasn't having much fun at all and simply wanted to leave and go home. Despite the music blasting, the laughter echoing around her, and all the festive decorations everywhere, Karen's mood was distant and uneasy. Something was clearly bothering her. Karen left the Halloween party at the Dyersburg Country Club around 11:30 at night on the 29th of October, 2011, with her friends Bill and Kathy Bonar. They were close friends of hers. Shortly after midnight had passed, Karen received a phone call from her daughter Ashley, who had also not enjoyed herself at her friend's party. She asked her mother to please come pick her up, which Karen did without hesitation. They returned home together before 2 o'clock in the morning. Both went to bed after getting home. Karen went to sleep in the bedroom on the ground floor downstairs. At the time, David was already asleep upstairs in a different room and did not wake up until after 10 o'clock in the morning when the daughters woke him up. That was when everyone realized that Karen was not at home anymore. Her car was also missing from the driveway, which suggested to them that she had gone out somewhere during the night for some reason. Kathy, Her friend, who had last seen her at the party, tried calling her cell phone between 10 and 11 o'clock in the morning, but without any success. The calls just rang and rang. David also attempted to contact her multiple times with the same frustrating result: no answer. As the situation seemed increasingly worrying and strange, they decided to call the sheriff's office and officially report Karen missing. Kathy reported her first, followed by her husband David. That same morning, Karen's car, a white 2004 Nissan Murano, was found less than half a mile away from her home. It was discovered on Millsfield Highway near the Harness Road intersection in northern Dyer County, sitting there with a flat tire. Later during the investigation, a screw was found embedded in the tire. Investigators theorized that someone had deliberately punctured the tire and carefully inserted the screw. But for what purpose? Why would someone do that? Karen Swift, whose maiden name was Johnson, was born in Galesburg, Illinois on the 25th of January, 1967, and grew up in Arkansas as one of 3 children. She was known throughout her life for being athletic and absolutely devoted to her children above everything else. Karen's family enjoyed a happy and financially stable life growing up. Interestingly, her father, Gary, was artistically talented and painted beautiful pictures as a hobby. In high school, she ran track competitively and was quite successful at it. She won races and medals. Karen never lost her deep love for running, even as she grew older and had kids. She often took part in local 5-kilometer races, enjoying the freedom and mental focus that each run brought her. Her dedication to fitness extended far beyond just her own personal routine. She actually worked as a personal trainer and fitness instructor, helping other people achieve their goals at the local YMCA. Through her work there, she shared not just exercise techniques and workout tips, but her positive energy, genuine motivation, and a real passion for health and overall well-being. Karen was widely described as a warm person and the life of the party wherever she went. She was well liked by basically everyone who met her. After graduating high school, she pursued gardening, which became both her passion and, for a time, her actual work and career. She helped people design their gardens and greatly enjoyed doing so. It combined her love of being outdoors with creativity. In 1989, Karen married David Swift, and together they built a family, welcoming 4 children into the world, 2 sons and 2 daughters. Family was absolutely central to her life and everything she did, but she also devoted herself generously to the wider community around her. She volunteered regularly at various organizations, took part in church activities almost every week, and contributed her time to causes such as Habitat for Humanity building homes. David was 3 years younger than Karen, and she was immediately taken with him when they first met. He was funny, charming in that effortless way, and well-liked by others in their social circle. Their first children were the couple's 2 sons, and it initially seemed that they would have no more children after that. Karen cared for the children full-time and managed the household, not working professionally outside the home at the time. David earned a good, solid living for the family. He was the manager of a production line at a company called Goodyear Tire. Karen was a devoted and incredibly attentive mother for whom her children were her absolute priority above everything else. As is often the case with stay-at-home moms, she became close friends with other mothers at her children's schools through playdates and school events. Their sons never caused any problems or got into trouble, and when they were a little older and more independent, Karen began supplementing the household income by designing gardens for clients. Life for the Swifts was going very well during this time. The couple were also fairly religious and attended church regularly every Sunday without fail. Unfortunately, all good things come to an end eventually. In 1999, Karen discovered something that shattered her world. Her husband was having an affair with another woman, and his mistress was pregnant with his child. This affair resulted in the birth of a son in late 1999 or early 2000. Understandably, Karen was absolutely devastated and had no intention of forgiving him at all. She was done. In early 2000, the couple officially divorced. Their marriage was over. Despite the separation and divorce, David desperately attempted to win back his wife. He pleaded constantly for forgiveness, claiming she was the love of his life and that the affair had been a terrible mistake that he deeply regretted. Reportedly, David pursued Karen persistently and relentlessly, appearing wherever she went like he was stalking her, and somehow he succeeded in winning her back. A few months after the divorce was finalized, the couple actually remarried. They gave it another shot. In 2001, their daughter Ashley was born, and 3 years later, in 2004, their youngest daughter arrived. After their reconciliation and remarriage, the Swifts became even more involved in church life than before, and Karen often spoke publicly about the importance of forgiveness in marriage. She talked about giving second chances. David appeared very grateful to his wife for giving him a second chance after his betrayal. Everything seemed to be going well for several years until another affair occurred. But this time it was different. This time Karen was the unfaithful one, and David forgave her just as she had forgiven him. Once again, the marriage fought to survive despite the betrayal. David believed that moving the entire family to a new location would resolve their issues by physically separating Karen from her lover. The move was sudden and rushed. Karen reportedly did not even see their new house before they actually moved into it. That's how fast it happened. In 2008, David and Karen Swift relocated from Pocahontas, Arkansas, all the way to near Dyersburg, Tennessee, in Dyer County, to a residence on Willie Johnson Road. Their eldest son no longer lived with them by this point, and the younger son was preparing to move out as well soon. The youngest daughter still required care and attention. Karen, as she had done with her older sons, supplemented the household income through garden design work for clients, but she remained primarily responsible for looking after her daughters and managing the home. The couple did not know anyone in the town at all when they first arrived, but Karen, being naturally sociable and outgoing, quickly made new friends. Soon enough, both David and Karen were being invited to neighborhood gatherings and social events, though David preferred to relax at home after work rather than go out and socialize. He was more of a homebody. Karen did not mind this at all. If her husband did not want to go out, she simply went alone without him. In 2010, Karen met new friends, Bill and Kathy Bonar, a married couple who lived nearby. They were the ones who would later accompany her to that fateful Halloween party. Both families had children around the same ages, and the families became close friends really quickly. However, there was something about the Bonars that David did not like at all, but which really appealed to Karen. They were very social and enjoyed partying and having a good time. Karen frequently attended their gatherings or went out with them to bars and clubs in town. Around this same time, Karen reportedly began drinking alcohol more frequently, which greatly displeased her husband David. The couple increasingly argued over Karen's social lifestyle and her nights out. After such heated arguments, Karen would reportedly leave the house upset and go straight to the Bonars' place. There were also rumors floating around that the Bonars had an open relationship and were members of a club called the Pink Poodle Club, which the couple strongly denied. David later claimed that he had caught Karen in compromising situations at parties at the Bonars' home, including one time in a hot tub with Kathy Bonar and on a separate occasion with Bill Bonar. Bill Bonar vehemently denied having any kind of affair with Karen. Both Bill and Kathy admitted that guests at their parties sometimes got into their hot tub in their underwear or even nude. but they strongly denied the existence of any organized swingers club and all the other allegations made by David. They said he was making things up. According to David's version of events, his wife constantly used her phone, texting someone mysterious and disappearing from the house in the evenings without explanation. He became increasingly suspicious and began monitoring her activities closely. Karen's partying and frequent nights out really upset him. He reportedly stopped trusting her completely and even began following her around town. Sometimes he would appear by pure coincidence in the same place as her and demand she return home immediately with him. Numerous friends and neighbors said that David repeatedly spied on his wife, displaying what they described as controlling and stalking behavior that made them uncomfortable. A neighbor, Janie Helm, claimed that David actually asked to access her yard so he could listen to what was happening at the Bonars' house where Karen frequently socialized. Can you imagine? A friend of Karen's, Amanda MacArthur, recounted an incident in a parking lot where Karen pointed out David's car hidden at the far end of the lot, suggesting he was following them that day. Karen had obtained a second secret mobile phone to communicate privately with friends and her divorce attorney without David knowing. Authorities later discovered that the phone number for this secret phone had been programmed into David's work phone, which indicated he was actually monitoring her communications the whole time. Bill and Kathy said that Karen had been considering divorce for a long time, but was genuinely afraid of David's reaction if she went through with it. When they had divorced back in 2000, he had been extremely persistent, stalking her constantly, confronting her in public, and even threatening to harm himself. According to Karen's version of events, that reconciliation and remarriage had been forced. She didn't really want to get back together with him. She also said she could not afford to hire a lawyer because David tightly controlled all of her finances and she only worked sporadically doing garden design. The Bonars wanted to help Karen escape this situation and lent her money so that she could finally file for divorce. Despite having the money, Karen remained absolutely afraid of David's reaction to the divorce papers. And around the time he was due to receive the petition on the 10th of October 2011, she strategically went on a week-long holiday with her daughters to avoid being home. The Bonars accompanied her on this trip for support and safety. On that specific day when he got the papers, Karen called her husband to inform him directly that she no longer saw any future for their marriage. It was over. The divorce petition that was filed by her lawyer requested primary custody of the children, child support payments, and half of the value of their house. After returning from that holiday trip, Karen stayed with Bill and Kathy Bonar on several different occasions when she feared being at home alone with David. David insisted repeatedly that he had never physically struck Karen or hit her, and everything investigators found suggested he was actually telling the truth about that. There was no evidence of physical abuse. The case of Karen's disappearance was treated very seriously by the police from the beginning. It was quickly established through phone records that, as we already know, she had returned home with her daughter, Ashley, around 2 o'clock in the morning, which was confirmed also by her phone's activity logs and tower pings. At 4:38 in the morning, the location of Karen's phone suddenly changed, indicating that she had left the house for some reason. As we know, her car was later located not far from her home on that highway. But there was absolutely no sign of Karen herself anywhere. Investigators strongly believed it looked as if someone had wanted to stage the scene to make it appear that Karen had driven somewhere, but her tire had been punctured, so she had abandoned the car and gone on foot somewhere. Unfortunately, this staging suggested that something really bad may have happened to her. Since David had received the divorce papers on the 10th of October and was reportedly very reluctant and upset about the divorce, it was pretty obvious that the first person the police wanted to question in detail was him. During police interviews, David Swift appeared using crutches due to a recent knee injury he claimed to have suffered. During the investigation, police noted that David's behavior and demeanor stood out almost immediately as unusual. Officers described him as unusually distant and extremely difficult to read emotionally. A former deputy who interviewed him testified that every single time they asked David questions about Karen and where she might be, he would look down at the ground instead of at them. He would not look me in the eye at all, the deputy said. For investigators, that consistent lack of eye contact was really concerning, often interpreted as a possible sign of deception or an attempt to avoid scrutiny from law enforcement. They also observed that David seemed focused almost entirely on complaining about Karen's behavior rather than on the fact that she was missing and potentially in serious danger. He mainly complained constantly that since Karen had met the Bonars, they had been a terrible influence on her and changed her. They were the ones who bought Karen that second phone which she kept secret from her husband, he kept saying. Later during the investigation, police would find this secret phone near the Swift home completely destroyed and smashed to pieces. One investigator later said in court that David appeared unable to talk about anything except what Karen had been doing wrong, which they interpreted as a major red flag. The investigator remarked that it felt as though this guy is definitely hiding something from us. As the interviews continued over several days, detectives found several inconsistencies and contradictions in David's statements regarding the last time he saw his wife alive. These contradictions deepened their concerns and suspicions, particularly given the couple's troubled marriage and the ongoing contentious divorce proceedings. Another detail that really troubled investigators was that David was not the first person to report Karen missing to authorities. Instead, it was the family's close friends, Bill and Kathy Bonar, who contacted the police after becoming worried about her. For detectives, it was highly unusual, even suspicious, that her own husband would not be the first person to raise the alarm about his wife being gone. Authorities later discovered that David had straight up lied about knowing nothing about Karen's second mobile phone, the private number she used to speak with friends, and her divorce attorney. When investigators examined his work phone more closely, they found that exact number saved on the device, completely contradicting his earlier statements to police. He had been caught in a lie. The Bonars admitted openly that they had indeed lent Karen money for the divorce and had given her the secret phone, which David had claimed he knew nothing about. According to them, David wanted to control Karen at every single turn, and she had grown tired of being controlled like that. As previously mentioned, David blamed Karen's new friends entirely for the changes in her behavior and personality. He did not claim outright that he wanted to control her completely, but he tried to persuade investigators that he was just trying to get her to stop drinking so much alcohol and attending so many wild parties. He stated that at one party his wife had drunk so heavily that she could barely stand up straight, and along with Kathy Bonar had stripped completely naked in front of everyone there and jumped into the hot tub. David was reportedly disgusted and humiliated by this behavior. He also said that he often picked up his wife from such parties when she was heavily intoxicated, not to stalk or control her, but because he was genuinely concerned for her safety and well-being. Karen's friends confirmed that when she lived in Arkansas before the move, she never behaved in such a party-focused way at all. On the contrary, she had been responsible, looked after the children constantly, attended church every week, and had her own strong principles and values. David suspected strongly that his wife had engaged in yet another affair with someone. In addition to all this drama, the couple also had a serious conflict with a neighbor who could potentially have been a suspect in Karen's disappearance. There was a significant dispute between Karen Swift and her neighbor John Hogshooter over a dog poisoning incident that occurred just a few weeks before her disappearance. Hogshooter was actually arrested on an animal cruelty charge for allegedly poisoning 2 neighborhood dogs, one of which belonged to the Swifts. Hogshooter later testified in court that the poisoning was absolutely not intentional at all. He claimed he had placed fly killer outside his home due to a severe fly problem caused by construction materials sitting in his yard, and that he did not even know what the Swift's dog looked like or that it would get into the poison. Due to this conflict and bad blood, Hogshooter was initially identified as a person of interest in Karen's disappearance, and his vehicle and property were thoroughly searched by police. However, police eventually cleared him completely of any involvement in her disappearance. Despite being cleared, Hogshooter actually provided testimony regarding David's suspicious behavior that he had witnessed. He said he observed David using crutches when other people were around watching him, but walking completely normally without any limp when he was alone, and didn't think anyone was looking. Karen's family were absolutely convinced she would never have left voluntarily without her children, so the idea of her just running away was completely ruled out by everyone who knew her. Yes, Karen desperately wanted to leave her husband, but only with her children coming with her. There was some speculation among investigators that Karen might have arranged to meet someone else after returning home that night, as she had been developing a new, more independent social life, secretly communicating with people via her hidden phone, and apparently had some admirers. Text messages that were recovered revealed that she had received one around 8:35 at night on the night of her disappearance from a man who wanted to take her out to dinner, though it is not confirmed whether they actually met up that night or not. Weeks passed slowly, and Karen was still missing. Unfortunately, this did not bode well for finding her alive. The primary suspect was, of course, her husband, David. On the 10th of November, the Swift residence was searched thoroughly. The search was conducted by agents with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation's Violent Crimes Response Team, based in Memphis, along with investigators from the Dyer County Sheriff's Office working together. The house was searched because it was the last place Karen had been seen alive by her family. And as part of standard investigative procedure in missing persons cases, forensic agents processed the entire scene carefully for potential evidence. Despite a thorough and detailed search, initial reports indicate that investigators found no indication that anything suspicious had occurred in the home. No blood splatters, no signs of struggle, nothing obvious. The house was actually searched multiple times over the course of the investigation, including another major search nearly 2 years later, in July 2013, after a new search warrant was obtained. The July 2013 search was described as extremely in-depth, with drywall removed from walls and screws taken out of the wood to look inside. But the nature and findings of this second search were sealed under a court order at the time and not released to the public. Here's part of David's interview with police. Well, it was Easter morning. I had to have knee surgery. Had to have a total quadricep or patella tendon fractured. Yeah, at my daughter's soccer game, and had to be taken by ambulance and had to have surgery the next morning about a week ago. It's been giving me a lot of problems. I had to, stairs and stuff like that because I had to pull sutures and the kneecap is restricted. But about a week ago, I was at work and turned wrong and it hurt. So I had an appointment today with another specialist to get a second opinion. The interviewer asked, but that's her primary phone? David responded, well, I'm finding out that she's got other phones, but that's the one that we've had, that she's had on the Verizon account that I paid for. Right. Any other ones that you know of that she has, that she would have, the officer asked? Well, I found out yesterday that Dylan Cabone had given her another cell phone that she'd been using. Any idea what that number is? It was my neighbor, Jamie. She was talking about the situation and everything that was going on with Kathy. She said, Sir, if you want to know what's going on, meet me in my backyard and I'll tell you what I see. We don't know. You don't know? We've heard that about 3 times now. That's interesting. So from other people, you keep kind of hitting on it. Okay. Well, Karen was over there, all the time. She started sneaking out of the house and she would go to be with Kathy and Bill. And I know even this past summer, I would go over to check on her and find them naked in the hot tub in the backyard. I found Karen naked in bed with Kathy one night. Kathy has a degree, a master's degree in psychology, but she has issues. And I think that's been a lot of the stuff that's been messing with Karen's head and stuff. And then with the excessive drinking and partying, there's been times during the day, even, I'd come home early from work or something, and Karen was so drunk once that she had passed out on the porch in her own vomit. She came home with Ashley, correct? Was there any kind of argument or anything? No, I just wanted to make sure that Ashley was okay because I questioned Karen about driving. I said, if you can't drive safely, I would get Ashley. And that was all the conversation was. Okay, how close did you get to her? Could you tell whether she'd been drinking? Oh, yeah, you can tell. I can always know when she's been drinking. But that was it. As soon as I realized that Ashley and they were safe, I went back upstairs, went to bed, and that's all I know until we got up about 10 o'clock on Saturday. Right now, where do you think she is? I don't know. I'm so worried about her. I mean, she could be anywhere. With Kathy telling me that at this point in time, if she knows that there was a ping on the Mississippi River, then that's where my mind's going now. Is she somewhere in the river? Do you think that she may have just told you that to throw you off? What if she's at her house? Why would she be putting us through this and the girls? Why has she done the things that she's done before and lied to you? I don't know. I don't know what to believe anymore. With all the lies and deceitfulness, what if she has left with somebody? How are you going to take that? I just want her to come home and to, be a mother. She doesn't want to be a wife. That's her decision. I could accept that. But if there's someone else, as long as they're not hurtful or harmful to the girls or whatever, I just have to accept it. 6 weeks after Karen Swift vanished without a trace, the search that had stretched across Dyer County and involved hundreds of volunteers finally led to a quiet patch of land near Bledsoe Cemetery, just 3 to 4 miles from her home, and from the location where her abandoned SUV had been found weeks earlier. On the 10th of December 2011, 2 men, Mark Rickman and Pastor John Robinson, who was the cemetery trustee, walked through the wooded area to inspect a series of overturned tombstones that had been vandalized. As they moved carefully through the tangle of withered kudzu vines that covered everything, something caught their attention and made them stop. A small part of what appeared to be human remains was visible beneath the dense dead vegetation. Looking closer with horror, they realized with shock that it was actually a body lying there. The remains were badly decomposed, almost completely hidden beneath the kudzu that had grown over them during the weeks. The condition of the body indicated that it had been there for quite some time, and investigators later concluded that this was definitely not the place where Karen had actually died. Her body had likely been placed in that secluded spot after the murder occurred somewhere else. An autopsy was performed, and it later confirmed what many people had feared all along. Karen Swift had died from blunt force trauma to the head. She had been beaten to death. The case was officially ruled a homicide by the medical examiner. The area where she was found had not been part of any initial search grid when they were looking for her. The area was quiet, isolated, and easily overlooked by anyone passing by. the kind of place where someone desperately hoped a body would never be discovered by anyone. There was no definitive evidence from the autopsy to indicate whether Karen had been sexually assaulted before her death. Her body was badly decomposed when it was discovered 6 weeks after her disappearance, making forensic analysis extremely difficult and limited. Despite this challenge, investigators examined every single piece of available evidence they could find. A DNA analyst testified in court that an examination of Karen's underwear, which was found pulled down around her thighs, revealed absolutely no male DNA at all. Likewise, her fingernail clippings that were collected contained no DNA other than her own. It appeared as though someone had struck Karen hard in the head with something resulting in her death. It was also possible that the act was not actually intended to be fatal, but the blow was so unlucky and severe that it caused her to die. Karen also had broken ribs, which investigators concluded were consistent with her being dragged across the rough ground after death had occurred. The primary suspect in everyone's mind was her husband, David, while friends and neighbors came forward to report his jealous and controlling behavior over the years. Neighbor Jennifer Gurian testified that she frequently witnessed David arguing with and yelling at Karen in public. She also mentioned that whenever Karen visited her house to hang out, David would inevitably appear out of nowhere and insist she go home immediately, demonstrating a clear pattern of possessive behavior. Neighbors provided information that directly contradicted David's claims about his physical condition at the time of the disappearance. One neighbor testified that just 2 days before Karen went missing, David had actually helped him move heavy hay bales, each weighing around 65 pounds, without using crutches at all. This completely contradicted David's later claim of having a debilitating knee injury that would have prevented him from moving Karen's body. Neighbor John Hogshooter testified that a few days after Karen was reported missing, he noticed a strong chemical smell coming from the direction of the Swift home that wasn't normally there. This observation was investigated as potential evidence of a cleanup effort, though the source was not definitively proven. Neighbors' interviews helped law enforcement and the jury understand the dynamics of the Swift household and David's personality, which the prosecution used to establish motive and a pattern of control. Karen had grown tired of her husband's possessiveness and controlling behavior over time. She confided in friends about it, and this was the main reason she desperately wanted a divorce. David, however, did not want to divorce at all, which could provide a strong motive for murder. On his behalf, the couple's daughters testified that they had not heard anything alarming that night. Had there been an argument or fight, it was likely one of the girls would have overheard shouting or noise. Both daughters confirmed that their mother often went out in the evenings, so it was definitely possible she had left that night and been attacked by a complete stranger. However, investigators were absolutely convinced from the very beginning that the perpetrator was David. They noted that David Swift had been searching dating sites, primarily Match.com, approximately 280 times in the period immediately surrounding and following Karen's disappearance in late October and early November 2011. The searches began as early as the 10th of October 2011, the exact day Karen served him with divorce papers, and continued intensely until the 14th of November 2011, when David's laptop was seized by authorities. The state argued that the frequency of these searches within 24 hours of his wife being reported missing indicated that David already knew Karen was not coming back ever. Some people, however, argued that David's behavior could be explained more simply and innocently. He had received divorce papers, knew the separation was imminent, and was presumably looking for someone new to date, which made a degree of sense. But the question remained, Why did he continue browsing dating sites while his wife was missing and her fate unknown? He might have thought she had left him, but he could also have known exactly what had actually happened to her. The judge ruled that this testimony regarding the dating site visits could not be admitted as evidence for the jury to consider. The issue of David's knee injury also appeared suspicious to investigators. Some believed he was faking it to deflect suspicion away from himself. With such a serious injury, he would not have been physically capable of dragging his wife's body after her death. Yet just before her disappearance, he had helped a neighbor move heavy objects without any problem. This discrepancy was considered odd and suspicious, but aside from these circumstantial hints, investigators had little else. There were no witnesses, no fingerprints, no DNA, or other concrete evidence linking David directly to Karen's death. Years passed slowly, and the case remained unsolved while life continued for everyone involved. David Swift moved on with his life. In 2014, he met Kelly Esmond on the dating site Christian Mingle, and their connection eventually led to marriage. They wed in May 2016, roughly 3 years after Karen's tragic death, beginning a new chapter in David's life. Over time, David and his new wife relocated to Alabama to start fresh. The years went by, and the killer of Karen Swift had still not been apprehended by authorities. On the 8th of August 2022, 11 years after Karen's death, investigators arrived at David's door with an arrest warrant. Finally, David Swift's arrest did not hinge on a single dramatic piece of physical evidence. Instead, it resulted from a careful re-examination of over a decade's worth of circumstantial evidence collected since Karen vanished. During this period, David's second marriage ended amid legal troubles. His wife, Kelly Esmond, filed for divorce from him in June 2022, which was finalized in March 2023. She described feeling shocked and betrayed by his behavior during and after their marriage, admitting regret for not recognizing warning signs sooner, and feeling misled by his apparent sincerity. She also reported harassment after their separation that caused genuine fear for her safety. Security footage showed him arriving at her home in the middle of the night, traveling a significant distance to get there, highlighting the seriousness of the stalking behavior. Authorities subsequently charged David with first-degree stalking in Alabama, underscoring a pattern of controlling and obsessive behavior similar to that reported by Karen's friends years earlier. While her account was not admissible in the Tennessee murder trial, it has been widely covered in news programs, providing additional insight into David's behavior patterns. In May 2024, David Swift's murder trial began, attracting intense public attention. The case was extremely high profile, relying heavily on circumstantial evidence and witness testimony portraying a marriage marked by tension and complexity. Ultimately, the evidence led to a verdict that left many questions unresolved. During the trial, prosecutors presented a key technological finding that bolstered their case. A forensic extraction from Karen's second secret phone revealed that someone had used the device hours after she was last seen alive, placing a call to its own voicemail at 9:55 in the morning on the 30th of October, 2011. That call was made while the phone was connected to the Swift family home's Wi-Fi network. Prosecutors argued that since Karen was already missing at that time, the only adult in the house who could have used the phone was David Swift. This suggested he had possession of the device and may have been manipulating evidence before police discovered it. Combined with the original circumstantial evidence, testimony about David's controlling behavior, the staged car accident, the faked knee injury, and the chemical smell reported by a neighbor, This digital forensic detail was sufficient to secure a grand jury indictment and move the case to trial. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Danny Goodman, openly acknowledged that there was no DNA, fingerprint, or eyewitness evidence directly linking David to Karen's death. Instead, their case focused on motive and behavior. They argued that David had killed Karen out of anger and rejection following her divorce filing 3 weeks earlier and her refusal of his repeated attempts at reconciliation. Friends of Karen testified to his jealous and controlling nature, describing incessant calls, spying on her at friends' homes, and showing up uninvited at social gatherings. Forensic evidence also played a role. A digital forensic examiner testified about David's online activity, highlighting that someone had accessed Karen's secret phone on the home Wi-Fi the morning she disappeared after she was already missing. Physical evidence included testimony from a tire expert who suggested that a screw found in Karen's abandoned car tire had been manually inserted, indicating the flat tire had been staged. The medical examiner confirmed that Karen had died from blunt force trauma to the head. The defense, led by attorney Daniel Taylor, maintained David's innocence, emphasizing the lack of concrete proof. They highlighted the absence of physical evidence directly linking him to the murder, arguing that if he had brutally killed Karen, there would be forensic traces. David's significant knee injury and reliance on crutches were presented as proof that he was physically incapable of moving her body. Character witnesses also defended David. Karen and David's daughter, Ashley Swift, testified that her father had been a kind and involved parent, disputing claims that he had moved her into another room on the night her mother disappeared. The defense also raised alternative theories, suggesting that Karen's social life involved risks and that others, including a neighbor with ongoing conflicts with the Swifts, could have been responsible. The trial presented a complex clash of narratives, the prosecution painting a picture of a controlling, vengeful husband, and the defense emphasizing the lack of direct evidence and alternative explanations. The result left the central questions of Karen Swift's death shrouded in uncertainty and debate. Additionally, his physical therapist, identified in reports as either Mr. Smith or Carrie Smith, testified for the defense regarding the state of David's knee at the time of Karen Swift's disappearance. The therapist explained that David experienced significant difficulty with movement, including walking and handling heavy objects, while acknowledging that David could lift weights of up to 100 pounds. The therapist emphasized that lifting is not the same as moving. In their professional opinion, moving a heavy object such as a human body, even a short distance, would have been extremely challenging for him and likely would have required assistance from another person. The defense used this testimony to argue that David was physically incapable of committing the murder and disposing of Karen's body on his own. However, the prosecution countered this with testimony from a neighbor who reported seeing David moving 65-pound hay bales without crutches just one day before Karen disappeared. After his murder trial in Tennessee concluded in June 2024, David Swift remained in custody despite being found not guilty of murder because the jury had been deadlocked on a voluntary manslaughter charge. In March 2025, the judge dismissed the remaining charge due to the statute of limitations clearing the way for his release. On the 18th of March 2025, David Swift was released from Tennessee custody and immediately transferred to Alabama to face separate stalking charges involving his second ex-wife, Kelly Essman. The extradition marked the next chapter in his ongoing legal battles as authorities in Alabama prepared to pursue the case against him. Ashley Swift recalled the long, agonizing wait for the verdict. When it was finally delivered, she initially felt a sense of closure, believing the case was over, but soon she realized it was not. David is innocent, Ashley said. She firmly believes her father is being falsely imprisoned while awaiting a new trial. That stark reality has made moving on difficult. I want justice for my mom, and I want my dad home, she admitted, but I want to live a normal life. Caught between grief and hope, Ashley continues to navigate the delicate balance of honoring her mother's memory while holding on to her belief in her father's innocence. And what do you think? What happened on that tragic day? Karen Swift will be remembered as a loving mom and a great friend, though the full truth of what happened may never be known. Rest in peace, Karen. As always, thank you so much for listening to this story until the very end. Take care of yourselves